What's up, y'all? This is Chelsea Smith. I go by model Chelsea Talise in the fashion industry. I'm also a LPCA or mental health therapist in the state of Kentucky. I have a wonderful friend and fashion designer here with me to accompany me on the first episode of season 2, episode 1, Beauty and Brains, Cognitions of the Creatives. We are going to be talking about stress awareness and how that takes up space in our day-to-day lives. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Miss Alishia Lee to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Alishia.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be a part of the episode.
Yes. So would you like to introduce yourself and what industry that you work in?
Absolutely. So I've been in fashion design, and modeling for the better part of 8 years now, and celebrating 6 years of babyyyy, which is my brand name.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, 2000, I think it's 6 years. Wow. 2018 is when we officially opened our doors, and 2025, if my math is right, then yeah, we're rounding out a 6 year here. And I create small batch and one-of-a-kind pieces. I specialize in non-binary and kind of gender fluid clothing. Love finding models that are not, I call it atypical. So if you're not, if you're super tall, or you're not tall at all, or you're, full figured, I do a lot of clothes and a lot of fashion around that.
I love that. And that is so important because I think a lot of people, especially new beginners, models particularly, feel that they have to be a certain size and a certain height to even get some type of role, in the industry. And that's not necessarily true anymore. I feel that one, you personally and your profession, your business, and just the industry in general has really started to kind of break those barriers and those expectations as far as what a quote unquote model should look like. So that makes me happy to hear that you are doing that locally. I know I'm in Kentucky and you're in Ohio, but that's right up the street to me. So I do consider that locally, and I appreciate the role that you play in our community, especially the fashion industry. So when it comes to stress awareness, there are different types of stress. Chronic stress, there's acute stress, and then there's just, our day-to-day stressors that we deal with, whether that's in our industry, as far as fashion or music, art, but also in our career paths, what we do on a day-to-day. So what are the main types of stress that you see in your day-to-day life, whether that is with designing, modeling, or just in your career field outside of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I say there's the big stressor for me being a producer, because with creating design and creating fashion, you have to do the thing. It's not like you can send off a report and someone else do it. You really have to put your hand to the sewing machine, hand to the models, all of that. And I do have a 9 to 5. I'm in a talent acquisition role. I recruit, 10 to 15 jobs a month, sometimes plus, for Chicago and for Covington and Cincinnati. Oh, so, and that's an in-person your-face job too. I do a lot of work with the schools and NKU and EKU and things like that. So I have to be somewhere all the time.
Yeah.
And that's a physical and emotional stress of being, just having to be active and on all the time, which wears you down, and you do have to take time away. So another thing with fashion is the financial stress of having to keep up a studio, having to buy materials, because it's a constant production of your craft. So I imagine even modeling, having to go to model calls, keep your body healthy, keep your mind healthy, deal with the rejection, and I experience that on the fashion side too. I've submitted my portfolio to opportunities and haven't gotten in. So, going back to the drawing board, constantly reevaluating myself and like my brand. So it's a it might not feel chronic, but some days I feel like it is, because you can never really turn it off. Because even
Yeah.
if I'm at my 9 to 5, I'm thinking about fashion,
Hmm.
so it's kind of, it follows you everywhere. And so those kind of stresses just plague me specifically, but also I think any creative has a ton of stresses, especially if you try to balance the actual 9 to 5.
Ooh, man, you ain't lying.
It's a lot, a
And
lot.
I feel you on that part of being at your 9 to 5, but think about something else. I'm just not even here. I know what I'm supposed to be doing at my 9 to 5. And typically the 9 to 5 is very routine, you know what I mean? And I think that kind of gives us some type of structure, in our lives. Like if you work a 9 to 5 and you're also a creative and you have things to do, a lot of us can be like, oh, I can do that at work tomorrow.
Exactly.
So it does provide that structure for those who are entrepreneurial creatives, you know what I mean? But at the same time, having to divide your attention, can be pretty stressful, and having to juggle two, three, and four different projects at once. And I agree with it being both emotional stress and financial, or sometimes physical. For you, you say you have to physically be making these pieces. So you are on the sewing machine, you are physically showing up to these spaces, you are being intentional on making callbacks, or even just making sure that you have to follow up after model calls. It's a lot. It's a lot to juggle, and I feel that it really can stretch us, in such a way that we're just like, ooh, I need a nap, or ooh, I just
Yeah.
need, I need to tap out, just for a second. And I think when it comes to stress, it's so a part of us, like whether you are creative or not. But I think stress is just so normal. Like there is a certain type of like normalcy that comes with stress. And I think because that it relates so much obviously to anxiety, and the fact that there is a such thing as good and bad, anxiety, or good and bad stress, or positive and negative stress. And I think one of the things that we can be more cognizant of is, is this stress um, helping me to achieve my goals, or is this stress becoming something that if I don't look out for it, um, possibly going to debilitate me, So I think that too kind of goes into our next question of how do you feel your industry views stress?
Great question. I think, to your point, it's a part of it.
Mm.
I think if you even look at like the TV shows, like not the Rip, what is it called? Coming to the Runway, or
Mhm.
any of the design shows, they thrive on, okay, you have 20 minutes to make a full collection, with a string bean and a rubber band, So it's like you see people crying and breaking down, having mental breakdowns in corners, and it's like that's all obviously all played up for television. But
Mhm.
I have plenty of times been in situations where it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to pull all nighter because
Oof.
the fabric didn't come in right time, or I messed it up, and so now I'm stressing myself out, and I got to get this done. It's par for the course. Like you can't just put it down and walk away and not have a finished product for your client or for a fashion show. You kind of got to get it done.
Mhm.
So although it's stressful, and although it eats at you, I think the industry as a whole, especially in fashion and performance art, the show must go on.
Yeah.
So like, sharing a quick personal note, I just did I did a play last night. I had a small role in a stage play, an adaptation of Native Son, and I was supposed to do Friday night's opening show and then Saturday night's closing show.
Mhm.
Well, Friday afternoon, I had to go to the ER because I had swelling in my ankle and they thought it might be a blood clot. And
Mhm.
so I'm getting checked out at the ER, like, okay, well, I'm going to miss my showtime. And I'm thinking about like, oh crap, I'm letting my director down. I'm letting my castmates down. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all, shut up.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't sit down somewhere, I'm like, so sorry guys. Like, but I'm stressing myself out
Mm-hmm.
even more because I'm like, okay, oh crap, I'm having blood work done and CAT scans and stuff, but I should be warming up my vocals for this play. And they're like, so when I went, last night and I was there, they were like, well, you're just glad that you're okay. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course I'm okay. Show must go on. We got to do this. So it's a lot of times like that we internalize like, okay, well, my emotions, my feelings are the least important because this stress is so normal to your point that I got to get this done versus let me take a nap and not
Yeah.
drop dead somewhere. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
that should be the first thought. And often it's not. And I think the industry feeds that too, because it's such a it's a constant consuming of media and talent and design and all the things that we got going on. So it's like the machine has to be fed.
Wow. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. One, I'm glad you're okay too.
Me too, girl.
But I do think, like you said, we have so much love and so much passion, for what we do. And again, the show must go on, whether that means I'm wearing an ankle brace or I've got a ice pack actively melting on my ankle while I'm at this show. But I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna show up, and I think across the board, as far as like industries, we just have this personality characteristic of loyalty, like loyal to the grind. Like we just have such a grind culture. And I think that there's positive and negative to that, like just being on the grind and knowing what you want, knowing how to get there, knowing what it's going to take to get there. And then just kind of marrying that vision, of this is what has to be done in order to achieve these goals. And when things come up, obstacles, whether that is physical ailments, car troubles, um, I don't know, family emergencies, we're still trying to figure out a deal.
Right. Start negotiating.
Yeah, we're trying to negotiate our situation to make sure that it stays in line with what our vision was to begin with. And on one hand, it is honorable, it's remarkable. But at the same time, when do we get to look out for us? And when are we going to take that step down when necessary? And I think a lot of it, because we have married this vision and we've married this goal, if it changes, then now we have guilt that we have to deal with. We have guilt, and then we have shame. And then we're thinking about other people's perceptions of us, So what if this is somebody's first fashion show? How embarrassing or how guilty would we feel if an actual family emergency, because I know sometimes we use this, but that's for the 9 to 5, right? That's for the 9 to 5. But if something actually happens to where it impacts our attendance, man, it feels so heavy, like that was my first fashion show. I'm not going to be able to make it, and people are probably going to think that I am not as serious or that I can't deliver, in the way that they expected. And so we have so many expectations on us that occur when we marry these visions and goals, and we don't have any room for life. It's just like you said, I'm like, the show must go on. Everybody's like, well, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. Where do I need to be? What time do I?
Exactly. What time should I have been there? Right.
Right. What did I miss? And so I think that just shines a light on the need for us to create time, for us to have downtime, for us to have self care, for us to cope with what else is going on in our lives, and I'm just a firm believer now that I'm grown, I'm 30, I'm an adult. Everybody got something going on, right? Nobody's life is just pitch perfect and what is it, peaches and cream and rainbows and butterflies. Like everybody is dealing with something. And I think it really comes down on us for it to be an assignment that we do routinely, whether that is weekly, monthly, um, daily, especially like meditations and practicing mindfulness, but how we can give our brains and our bodies a break.
Right.
Because I think I want to say, um, I looked it up a while ago, but our minds experience like somewhere around 60,000 thoughts a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
It is.
So even if you have a free day, right, and you're at home, maybe Netflix and chilling, maybe reading a book, doing the bare minimum, our minds are still doing more than we are.
Exactly. Exactly.
And how intentional do we have to be to do nothing, Alicia?
You have to literally plan nothing.
I know.
You have to plan nothing. And even then, it's like, well, I'm sitting here. I could probably put a little laundry in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's where we talk about boundaries a lot. And mostly when we talk about boundaries, it's like boundaries with others, how we can protect ourselves emotionally, physically, mentally, from other people or other things and spaces. But this right now, what we're talking about is our boundaries with self. You know?
Exactly. Exactly. And that
Yes.
mindfulness that we fail to practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So standing on business, when it comes to giving us what we deserve, and I think that everybody's routine looks different, So if you do have a 9 to 5 and you're also an entertainer or a creative, what does that look like? Because somebody who does not have a 9 to 5 and is full blown entertainment, that can look totally different. So, as far as stress and tools that we can use to alleviate our stress or be preventative, when becoming stressed out or burnt out, because that is a thing. When we're working in a burnout phase, um, our work might not look as good to us, or it might not feel as good to us or to the people that we are trying to sell our work to or show our work to. Um, so, from your experience, or I'm sorry, did you have anything you wanted to share as far as how the industry views our stress and kind of what we just unpacked as far as internal boundaries and kind of standing on business when it comes to giving ourselves what we need.
Yeah, just that it's so important to have your boundaries are one of those things. Like it's nice to have. It's
Mhm.
we in theory we have tons of them.
Mhm.
To your point, we don't often enforce them for ourselves. I won't let you talk crazy to me, but I'll talk crazy to me all the time.
Mhm.
I won't answer a phone call after midnight, but I'll be up till 3 a.m. working on something. So
Ooh.
being able to be like, okay, listen, I deserve the best of me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and sometimes that shame that I don't think we talk about it enough
Mm.
is that shame is real.
It
Like
is.
I have seen it from in our industry, in the modeling and design industry. To your point, if somebody has a car breakdown, and I know some people have abused their excuses,
Uh-huh.
but seeing someone that like doesn't have childcare,
Mhm.
if your baby is sick and they can't go to daycare or grandma is out of town or whatever the case may
Mhm.
be, you know that you can't bring your child to a modeling call or to a rehearsal. It's bad form. They're
Mhm.
distraction. You can't do your best walk because you're making sure that your baby doesn't flip the lights on or whatever. So the shame of going, I know that this will be looked at as unprofessional and
Mhm.
I might miss my shot. That sends people into a spiral.
Ooh.
And it's like, well, gosh, like I'm a parent, like my kids are adults now,
Mhm.
but when I was younger, I had to take them with me in places because I couldn't leave them by themselves. So
Mhm.
I had to be okay missing on opportunities that would impede on my parenting. And
Yeah.
that gave me a certain sense of failure and a certain
Mhm.
sense of shame and even a little bit of resentment towards being a parent.
Yeah. Ugh.
Because I'm like, dang. if you're the last one here, I could be on Billboard now. Did you feel awful for even having that thought of like, dang, you asked to be here.
Yeah.
I just got this idea after you got here. I wasn't modeling before or doing fashion before you got here. So why do I even let myself get this way? So I think an option or something to push, and I challenge designers and photographers who are in these spaces, working with parents or working with, people in general, just having some grace.
Yes.
Giving some grace, because there's been times where I've had to cancel projects because I'm done. I'm spent. I can't, my health is impacted, or like things have just fallen apart so much that I need to regroup. Yes. And I've had to cancel things. And I know that there's some people that might not have worked with me after that, thinking like, oh, dang, well, she canceled this event. Now I'm salty. I don't want to work with her again. And that's fine. I can't lose sleep over, like I think you mentioned a little bit ago, other people's perception of me when I know that I'm coming from a good place. So if you got to cancel a modeling gig, or you have an emergency, communicate with that showrunner, communicate with that person. Hopefully they understand. And if not, that's probably not the project for you in the future anyway. So don't beat yourself up if life happens. And if we can have more conversations around the shame that comes with, like, try to give yourself that grace too, of like, okay, I could not have avoided this 105-degree fever. Right. So we're going to take care of this. We're going to be present and mindful of what's going on right now. And there will be opportunities for me in the future, and let that be that. And it's hard. It's easier said than done. But I think that will help reduce the stress and anxiety we feel when life happens in the middle of anything, because that happens regardless if you're a doctor, a model, a plumber. It's going to happen. So giving ourselves a little bit more grace is something I want to add.
Yes. Oh, you said a mouthful for sure. I think, like I said, and I use this term a lot, but when we marry that vision, like it just leaves little to no room for change, or some type of switch up to occur. And it's very much so like setting us up for the all or nothing mindset. A missed opportunity does not mean a failed career.
Exactly.
It just doesn't. I'm gonna say it again for y'all who's listening. A missed opportunity does not mean a failed career. It does not mean that your name is gonna get carried through the whole industry and Alishia is gonna tell everybody that you are a model who is not serious about your business. Right. I mean, and no shade to you, Miss Alishia, but Alishia ain't the only designer in Ohio.
Nor am I. Exactly. And it is frustrating when you do see people abuse because I've had plenty of people work with me and be like, oh yeah, I missed that email. No, you actually responded to me and said, I got it. Or I can see on the group text where you like the message of be here on time and you're 45 minutes late with no explanation. So yeah. There is a certain level of frustration that comes with just unprofessional people, but that's completely separate than you were having a life event and you need grace. But people abuse it. And I can say that probably helps with that feeling of like, oh crap. Because we all know I don't want to get looked at like the person I know is always late or always flaking. That's not me. And it's like, again, with that negative perception.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we're speaking of that as if it is a separate conversation, but for the sake of this one, I'm going to tie them together, like professionalism and being preventative in having stressful interactions in your industry, what that looks like as far as expectations. If you do sign up for a model call, and you get accepted, like at that moment, responding and saying, thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited. This is my primary or preferred line of communication, through email or this phone number, and maybe even following up. I do that as a model, but you can maybe give some commentary on what that looks like for you as a designer. I don't know if that's annoying or if that is appreciated. But I do that just so in case something does come up, designer does have some type of relationship or some type of receipt, that I was in communication the whole way, and unfortunately, here we are now. Like, your first time hearing from me is not going to be that I don't have childcare for my kid.
Right, right.
I think that sets us up for success, but also prevents us from having to burn any bridges. Because if my first conversation with you is that my kid is sick and I can't make the show, then that might just be the end of it. But if I have been communicating with you about how excited I am, and maybe just asking some questions for clarity so that you can get a gist of how invested I am in this, and then to see that something has come up, then it wouldn't be a question of how interested I am. It's just more so life occurred. So I think putting ourselves in position to not get stressed out towards the end of a project or towards the end of practices, when it's almost time for a show, keeping in communication. If you plan to be at the practice, hey, I can't wait to see y'all later,
Right,
things like
right.
that, to show that you're still invested and you're showing up. And when these things arise, it just doesn't, it lessens the blow, if that makes sense.
I agree. I agree. And I love hearing from talent. Like
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely do. When I send out a congratulations, like you've been selected. We love to have you. And I
Mm-hmm.
get thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. I'm super excited to work with you again. Like
Yes.
those make me feel seen and
Mm-hmm.
validated as a
Mm-hmm.
designer. Like I am also excited about you. So that shared excitement just fuels good feelings all around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I will say typically it's never a one and done. So if somebody does have a life event,
Mm-hmm.
and they're unable to perform, rarely is that one time the uh, end all.
Yeah.
Rarely is it like, okay, this person didn't show up once, so they're done forever.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, what happens is this person has a chronic issue with communication, or they're chronically unprofessional, and now this is the straw that broke the camel's back, or there's not
Mm-hmm.
enough time to go back and forth. But I enjoy hearing from people, and you're right, it does build good rapport.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, for
builds
sure.
great rapport, and I feel like it's a professional courtesy. Even when you think about corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
you have an interview, you send an email
Yeah. Yeah,
or
follow
a thank you
that.
note. So it's
Mm-hmm.
exactly, and that's, in my opinion, that separates people from that don't have to stress about getting other jobs
Mm-hmm.
and getting other gigs, because they're built to have that rapport,
Mm-hmm.
and they understand how a small note, a small gesture of I thank you so much for your time. I
Yeah.
appreciate being here. I have a few things coming up where it might be a
Mm-hmm.
conflict on rehearsal. Like people that are understand that communication is powerful.
Yes.
Those types of people typically are probably a little less stressed
Mm-hmm.
because they're not living more reactively. They're proactive, and if they know that there's a pending issue around, pending issue,
Mm-hmm.
the people that need to know, you know, they know, like I've had issues where, hey, my kid is got a basketball tournament, and if they win, then I'm gonna be then my next 4 Saturdays is done.
Yeah.
Now if they lose, like they've been losing, we good, and then surprise, surprise, they win, and now I'm stuck. So now but I've told that person ahead of time. So I think
Mm-hmm.
this having that communication, you'll be so surprised on how that can de-stress a lot of situations.
Yes. Yes. Communication is such a big deal. Honestly, I believe that communication can be the thing that separates two great candidates from one another. It
Mm.
can be a model who has a dope ass walk. They know how to pose. They're comfortable. I mean, two of them. They these are two models that you really love. But we can only accept one. But one of
Mm-hmm.
them followed up and said, I'm so excited to work with you. And that could be what seals the deal. Like, oh well, I guess we're going with this one.
Yeah.
politeness and having manners. You know, just
Absolutely.
those simple things can really take you far. And even to the point of, if we get to a point where we do have to cancel, or we can't show because life has happened, still sending the designer maybe some flowers the day of the show with a note like, I really wish I could be there, but I hope the show is amazing. If you're not into sending flowers or whatever, still some type of email like, I hope this doesn't impact our professional relationship or any opportunities that arise in the future. You know, just
Yeah.
making sure that you keep those lines of communication open, and not jumping to conclusion that because you couldn't make this show, it's over for you. And I think that might be one of the good things that came out of COVID, is
Yeah.
that we've learned how to humanize um, people in higher up roles. You know, now when there are meetings on Zoom, like, kids are in the background. You know, husbands or wives, spouses, partners are in the background, because we live in a new world now. So I think we are doing ourselves a disservice when we feel that the people that we are working for don't have empathy, you know, and don't have a sense of understanding. And I guess too, that kind of makes me think like, are those people that you would want to work for if you do believe that they won't be understanding, or they won't be, you know, empathetic? And of course, there are rules and um, exceptions to certain things, but keep in mind who you're working with, you know?
Mhm. No, I agree with that. I agree with that. I think that's to the point you made a moment ago. There's been plenty of times where I've been in casting calls looking at models, and I just make a note of the people that came 15 minutes early.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would go for a model who was dressed appropriately 15 minutes early with a positive attitude, saying hello to people as they walk in, you know,
Mm-hmm.
being off, maybe off to themselves. Maybe they're not a social butterfly, but they're engaging, they're asking questions, they're
Yeah.
polite, over someone who is, you walked in 16 shows for me, but you have a stank attitude, so it's like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right. That, I think, the stress a lot of times, and I've heard this recently, is that we take a huge hand in our own suffering.
Mm. That's good.
And thinking about the people that I've worked with over the years, and I've been guilty of this too, kind of being upset at something that I've caused. Like, okay, I know I was 10 minutes late to this thing, or so I missed the first bit of introduction. Now I'm behind, I'm confused, and I'm frustrated because I'm ashamed that I'm confused because I was late. It's like this
Mm-hmm.
spiral.
Yeah.
And it's like, now I'm stressed out sitting here and I can't even fully be present and mindful and
Mm-hmm.
enjoy this experience because I'm already so far in my head. But had I came a little earlier, or ate a breakfast, or whatever the case may be, what I need for my self-care,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been prepared, and then I could have really shown up as my best self.
For sure. For sure. And to your point, we just keep saying to your point, to your point.
Right.
But you are making you're highlighting really, really good stuff. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing is the body's physiological response to stress, not being able to be mindful and not being able to be present and in the moment when we're under stress, and how stress activates that fight or flight response, so we are just on go, or we are just so walled up, because we've already had all this stress during the day. If the model call is in the evening, I've had a terrible day. I haven't had any time to debrief. And so I do have a stank attitude at my model call, or I haven't eaten, because I've had such a jam-packed day. And so my mind is off, my body is off, and you just aren't yourself. And someone who is new to a fashion show, or is a new face to a designer or to you, you don't know the difference on whether this is this person all the time, or whether this is just them having an off day. So kind of like going into our third question of what has been to you ways that have been beneficial of managing your stress in the past, because I do think we need to know how to have stress management in order to present as our full selves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know from trial and error for like show days, speaking specifically to like fashion, I need to have my care package.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, it's like being organized,
Yes.
um, whatever makes me feel less stressed. I start from the end in mind. Like, how do I want to feel during this event?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, okay, I know I'm going to be uncomfortable if I wear these shoes. So
Mm.
I'm going to bring my comfy shoes and my runway shoes.
Yes.
I'm going to bring my sweater in case it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bring my water bottle. I'm going to bring my own snacks in case they don't have food or they don't have food I like or can eat. So
Mm-hmm.
I think about self-care in the moment too.
Yes.
So to prevent the stress from happening in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because we tend to be really reactionary versus proactive. And I think about, okay, the night before, I'm typically, when I started out in fashion, I would be up till almost the show call time. Like I
Mm-hmm.
sleep. I would be up obsessing over small details, packing stuff, and I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
people to help me. So since I'm like, okay, if I don't have an assistant that can work that day, I'm going to organize this week. I'm going to make sure that I have my name tags printed out, my garments that are finished, done and away from me, just thinking about all those pre-steps. And that way, when it comes to the day, my mind is clear. I know what I need to do. I'm not snapping at anybody because I forgot to eat or, I'm trying to be as proactive as possible, knowing that it's going into a stressful environment. And
Yes.
what's caused, what the reaction, I should say with your action, but the byproduct of that has been
Mm.
in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, I maybe say I have 2 or 3 years. I'll give myself less credit. It's been 2 or 3 years. I'll be in places like New York Fashion Week, or I'll be somewhere, and people are like, "You're so calm,"
Mm.
and I'm like, you don't know. Like, I won't tell me you don't even know the half of it. Like, I had to practice this, but when I'm calm, the models are calm.
Yes.
When I'm calm, the makeup artists, I give clear direction there. People are
Mm-hmm.
melting down, freaking out. I'm like, it's cool. Hey, there's some extra snacks over there, or there's, hey, go get you some water, or I already ordered us some pizza. It'll be here in an hour. Like, I think about how I can kind of pass it forward. And
Mm-hmm.
so make sure that there's food for the models, or make sure there's a comfortable space, the temperature's controlled. So I try to kind of spider web it out.
Yes.
And after care, for when I'm not doing fashion, like for the play last night, I had my care person on call. I'm like, that was somebody that was there at the play who was like, what do you need afterwards? And I was able to articulate, I'm gonna need food and I'm gonna need to sleep.
Yes.
So you were in charge of feeding me and putting me to bed. and they followed through. And so whether it was my mother or a person I was like dating
Mm-hmm.
throughout the years, I've been really good at, assigning someone for high pressure events, being like,
Yeah.
okay, when we leave here, this is what I need from you. Or tomorrow night, when we leave this event, are you available for XYZ?
Yes.
And having those people in place, like keep my dog. My mom, I was like, it's going to be tech week for this play. I need you to keep my dog.
Yeah.
Give her food. I'm going to be late coming in the house. Here's her food. Here's her toys.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to take her for me. So we're notoriously bad at asking for help as creatives.
Yes.
I think that comes with the territory.
Yes.
But asking for help has saved me so many moments of unnecessary stress, because I would be venting and someone would say, well, why don't you just say something? I would have helped.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, if I trusted that, then I probably would have.
Right.
But I don't. So I'm going to do it myself and be mad that you didn't.
Or didn't ask me.
Exactly. So getting over that and having multiple people, and that's hard too, especially, I'm a single, I've been a single mom. I was married, but, raised my kids majorly by myself. And so that fear of releasing power or control and something bad happening, like that has followed throughout a lot of areas of my life.
Yeah.
So being able to have multiple people that I've built up and multiple people that I have had to have my trust in to help me through those moments has been a paramount.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I was thinking that before you said it, like, man, we have such troubles asking for help.
Hmm.
And you said specifically for creatives, and I think women really struggle with that too. Just
Yeah.
especially like you said, being the primary caregiver, of your child. Um, we know how to do it. We
Hmm.
know how to do it, and it's scary to think about me trying to plan going into a stressful environment or a stressful situation, and making sure that my baby is in not a stress free environment, or as less stress as possible. But that's something that we could stress over while we're doing
Hmm.
our own thing, worried about if baby's okay. So as a mother, I totally resonate with that, but I do think it takes a village. And just taking the light off of specifically mothers, but parents in general, if you're a single dad or just a parent in general, like I said, kids come first. And you mentioned a few minutes ago, back in our last question, like how something will come up in our lives, and we have to kind of take a step back from a creative opportunity, and then it could create some type of resentment for the child.
Hmm.
But we're also not looking at the fact that, yeah, it might be a missed opportunity in this area of our industry, but we are 5 stars in parenthood. We're making sure that we're getting the job done, which has been a priority, and it just feels like, man, I can't find a good work life balance to save my life. And so, on top of that, organization is so big, especially for me as a model. If I know what time is showtime, what time I need to show up, I ain't doing nothing the day of,
Right.
but driving, because I'm packing the bags the night before. I'm putting them in the car. Like
Hmm.
you said, the snacks, the water, the sweaters if I get cold, my comfy shoes. And honestly, days of the show or even the night before, I don't accept calls that may yield some stress to me.
Exactly. Exactly.
I just can't, because anybody who is a model or designer, it is on as soon as the behind the scenes curtains open,
Right.
until you leave. So it is very much a stressful environment. It's expected, but it is that positive stress. It's the stress that keeps us going. It's the stress that motivates us to have a good show. Negative stress will be stress that makes us feel that we are in danger.
Hmm.
And it's never that, it's never that. But again, fight or flight response, our body don't know the difference. It's just
Exactly.
stress. And so, I do think knowing yourself, being self-aware, of your emotional threshold, what all you can maintain, what capacity are you at walking through the door? Do you have it in you to socialize as much as you typically do, or do you need to take some time to recharge, to calibrate? So being able to give yourself what you need in that time, and knowing what you need, I think is very important as far as stress management. And then also having a community within your industry, um, or creating it. If I'm a new model, quit being scary.
Hmm.
Yes,
Right.
I'm calling y'all out, new models. Quit being scary. Everybody is here for the same reasons. So start socializing, start making yourself a community, so that your next fashion show, you'll see familiar faces and you'll have bonds. I'm not saying being best friends with everybody. I know how some people are just anxious about new relationships, but a community does not mean you have to be best friends with everybody.
Right.
It just means that you have support. And heck, if you miss a practice, if you miss a show, you can check in with somebody. Hey, what did I miss? What do I need to practice tonight? So I do think, for the sake of stress management, having a support system for ourselves, but also being open and intentional with creating new communities and new villages.
Absolutely. You, I, the, I, you are. this could go on. We could talk for another 4 hours about
I
this. Oh my
know.
gosh. Just around the model community. Because if
Mm-hmm.
I recall often giving notes to people that will say, well, I can't go because I don't have a ride.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, who did you ask? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask nobody. Well, if you know that getting to a place is going to be a stressor for you,
Yeah.
ask around, like put it in the group. Hey, I've got $40.
Mm-hmm.
I can catch an Uber, but I'd like to carpool with somebody. Does anybody live in this particular area?
Yeah.
I would love to catch a ride with you. I've got $40.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just
Mm-hmm.
do it for free. Know that people need some money.
Right.
Um, and if no one responds, don't take it personally, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe you connect with somebody at a practice. Like I said, don't be scary. Like, be open to getting what you need and knowing that it will be provided if you seek it out.
Yes. Yes. And don't become discouraged if the first answer is no.
Right. Right. Because we all just as freaked out. Like, that's the thing I don't think people understand. We are all just as scared.
Uh-huh. Hello.
Like, I am terrified that one day someone's gonna be like, I hate your clothes. I'm gonna be like, damn,
Never.
ouch. Get out though. But
Right.
ouch. I'm gonna cry later,
Next.
but you can get out. But we're terrified that I'm gonna do my best walk and not get picked for anything. Or,
Mm-hmm.
I make all these clothes and no one buys it. Or, I perform this play and no one makes a sound. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a joke that I said, and no one chuckles. So we're all freaked out about the same thing, and it's a human experience we're all trying to navigate. So the stress comes from us thinking that it's just us
Yeah.
experience it. Like, we're not the only ones experiencing it. We're all freaked out about something.
Mm-hmm. Last piece is if you are a part of community or said village, figuring out how to play your role and whoever you are serving, being polite, being approachable, being someone who is open and willing to, okay, girl, let me zip this back for you. Let me help you
Mm-hmm.
put your shoes on. Your nails are long.
Yes.
Just anything. Or if you see a blemish in someone's makeup, like just being able to take some of that stress off because man, it goes by so fast back there. And
Mm-hmm.
it can be 3 and 5 hours, but it's speedy the whole time. So
Right.
just as a community, we have to also know what role we are wanting to play when we come through the door, just so
Mm-hmm.
that we can be of help to everybody. And if we are being receptive to that, then the help is going to be on our side as well. It's definitely a community effort. So, um, guys, just make sure your next show or your next project that we're pouring into each other, we're giving compliments because everybody's nervous. Everybody is having
Right.
some type of what's it called? Not intrusive thoughts, but maybe those two, impulsive thoughts as well that may kind of take us away from the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
So just doing our best to be in the now. And I think it's very hard. I tell people all the time that we are time travelers because our
Mm-hmm.
mind is constantly in the past or right before us. So I think one of the biggest ways that I attempt to manage my stress is just being in the now. I can't think about what's going on tomorrow or after this show. I can't afford it. So being in the now has been very beneficial to me so that I don't miss anything and so that I can show up as my best self. Is it hard? Absolutely. Because like I said, we all have something going on, but being in the now, when we are able to really hone in and become elite at that, I think we'll see the benefits of it as well. So that is all I have today, Miss Alishia. Is there anything you wanted to add on?
No, just remember that you are having a human experience, and
Yes.
give yourself the grace that you're hoping to get. And
Mhm.
a lot of that stress, especially as a creative, take that time, say no to a couple projects to rebound and get your rest. don't forget about taking care of you, or you're going to end up in the hospital,
Woo.
unable to give anybody your craft. So
Mhm.
super grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, yes, I loved having you on the show. I'm a fan of your work. I
Thank
walked
you.
for Alicia just one time, but I've been
Just
itching to do it again,
one.
y'all.
I know. We gotta get back. You were fantastic to work with.
Yes, I really enjoyed it. So, thank you for that past opportunity. I had such a good time, and thank you for your time today and being here and present and dropping your gems and your wisdom from your perspective as a designer and an actress and a mother and a model, all the things. I really appreciate you. I hope you all got some good insight today on us talking about stress awareness. Please stay tuned for Beauty and Brains, Cognitions of the Creatives, Season 2.